Good afternoon, it's Tuesday the 31st of May 2016, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish. With me in the studio, Mike Robinson. Don't adjust your sets, this is a colour production, although we're dressed in black and white today.
Too warm for jumpers.
Too warm for jumpers is the answer, because here in Plymouth it is a wonderful sunny day. We've had a fantastic weekend with temperatures warmer than some parts of the Californian coast. So we're a little bit surprised to read that Norfolk had an appalling weekend, and it's still raining in Brighton, still raining in Worthing, still raining in Hampshire, but Plymouth and Shropshire doing quite well. The sun shines on the righteous. Where do we start, Mike?
The righteous, perhaps?
Well, here we are. Warnings as to what's really taking place in Europe, or maybe not. So on a Vote Leave poster, what had been printed: Halt the German advance, vote Leave. Now, this was spotted by some Vote Leave supporters. It's caused great consternation because it would appear that this is not a genuine poster. However, another one had appeared at another location, and the blacking out of the word German was on the poster itself. That's not something that we've done here at the UK column. But this is causing great consternation because, of course, the real poster should just simply say Vote Leave. And the interesting discussion at the moment is, what is this? Is this a Vote Leave supporter who's genuinely concerned about the role of Germany in the European Union, or is this a smear campaign as part of the EU referendum Psyop? What do you think, Mike?
Could be either. But we have another thing going on in the Telegraph today. Voters who've been receiving their postal vote documentation. If you look closely at that, the second pane there says, explains to you how you fill in the form. And the pen, of course, is hovering over the box, which says you should remain. So lots of people complaining about this, that this is biased from the Electoral Commission. They wouldn't be biased, Brian.
Well, I think they would, Mike, yeah, absolutely. And I'd seen another pickup of advice that a local council had put out where they were using a pencil to actually tick the box. But if I remember correctly, at the last election, I was surprised to find in the voting booths, that there were pencils provided. And of course, as people are pointing out, that just makes fiddling the vote that much easier.
But that would mean corruption.
It would mean corruption, Mike.
But surely Britain's not corrupt.
Unfortunately, I think it is.
Well, indeed, and this is Roberto Saviano, who is a journalist who focuses on the Mafia in particular, and he is saying that Britain is the most corrupt country in the world. Now, this is slightly different from the position of Transparency International, who believes that Britain is only the 10th most corrupt nation in the world, according to their Corruption Perceptions Index 2015. Mr. Saviano wrote the best-selling exposés on the Gomorrah and 000, and those are the names of the books on the Mafia. And he had this to say: if I asked you what is the most corrupt place on earth, you might tell me, well, it's Afghanistan, maybe Greece, Nigeria, the south of Italy, and I will tell you it's the UK. And of course, what was he focusing on? Well, he was focusing on the City of London, of course. Now, the City of London, no corruption there at all, as you can imagine. Most people still don't realise that the City of London has a permanent lobbyist in the House of Commons. This is one of the key city officers. He's called the Remembrancer. And if you look at Wikipedia, you think it's all very, very nice. The Remembrancer's department of the City of London is broken into 3 distinct branches of work: parliamentary, ceremonial and private events. The Parliamentary Office is responsible for looking after the City of London's interests in Parliament with regard to all public legislation. Well, that sounds a bit dodgy, but then it goes on to say the Remembrancer is a parliamentary agent and as such can observe House of Commons proceedings from the under gallery facing the Speaker's chair. However, this access does not give him the ability to participate or influence the proceedings. Well, that's quite a strange comment, because that's not what most people understand. But we go on. The corporation in general and the Remembrancer in particular have no powers to overrule Parliament, which has the right to make legislation affecting the city. For example, the corporation needed to request a private act of Parliament in 2002 to modernise its system of local elections, and so on. The right to submit briefings to MPs or to submit evidence to select committees is the same as that for any other individual or body. That's what Wikipedia says, right? But when you go and look at the City of London website and actually read what it says here, the current Remembrancer is Paul Double. The Remembrancer is one of the city's 4 law officers, and the office is responsible for the maintenance and protection of the city's constitution. It is the city's parliamentary agent and the parliamentary agent for the Honourable the Irish Society, and the city's chief of protocol. The office was created in 1571. In its early years, it was closely allied to the monarch and the court. And this is reflected in some of its functions today, which include liaison between the city and the royal households. The office acts as a channel of communication between Parliament and the city. So it's a channel of communication between Parliament and the city. In the contemporary context, this means day-to-day examination of parliamentary business, including examination of and briefing on proposed legislation and amendments to it. So the Wikipedia article says that they get no rights to look at legislation before it is made public, yet the website says that they get to examine parliamentary business, including examination of and briefing on proposed legislation and amendments to it, regular liaison with the select committees of both houses, and contact with officials in government departments detailing with parliamentary bills. Liaison is also maintained with the City Office in Brussels and other member states' permanent representations in relation to draft EU legislation. So here we see the relationship between the City of London, which is the most corrupt organisation, or at least place on the planet, perhaps, and its relationship with parliamentary legislative process in Britain, but not just in Britain, in the European Union as well. Now, it has to be said that Caroline Lucas in 2013 called for the Remembrancer to be expelled from the House of Commons. And she wrote to John Bercow, who's the Speaker, asking him to consider removing the Remembrancer from the floor of the House, and to end the Remembrancer's privileges to view legislation during the drafting process. The House of Commons Library then advised that the Remembrancer's privileged access to the House of Commons is not given by legislation, is under the total control of the Speaker, but the Speaker has done absolutely nothing to remove this insidious lobbying body.
So one man, the Speaker, has the ability to allow the City of London to do X, Y, and Z inside Parliament. Surely he would himself be controlled by the city.
Couldn't possibly comment. That people must draw their own conclusions, but that's pretty clear, isn't it?
That would be mine.
Yes.
Bought and paid for in order to do exactly what the city want, which is to include their Remembrancer in Parliament, taking part in the drawing up of legislation.
Absolutely, and affecting the work of select committees and so on. Now, of course, right in the heart of the City of London is the Bank of England, the nationalised private bank. What is it? Well, it's nationalised in the sense that the British public owns all the shares of the Bank of England, but it's a private bank in the sense that it's completely independent from government. And so it does its own thing. And of course, the head of the Bank of England is Mark Carney, and he runs off to give City of London policy to the Bank for International Settlements, which of course is the central bank of central banks. So the City of London then gets to define policy for all the other central banks around the world. Now, if we come back to the City of London Corporation for a second, of course, the logo is the dragon. And if you go to the City of London, at the entrance of each of the streets into the City of London is a statue of a dragon. I just want to remind everybody of the Bradbury pound at this point, and remember that the key sort of diagram on the Bradbury is the slaying of the dragon. This is one of the reasons. I believe that this is one of the reasons it was put on there. I have no particular evidence for that. That's other than speculation, I suppose. But I think it's very appropriate. Now, the other thing to notice on the Bradbury, of course, is that it is not a promissory note. It's not a promise to pay. It's a currency note, and that's something slightly different.
Just fascinating, Mike, isn't it? See those banking institutions, which we know from dialogue ourselves, but Justin Walker from the British Constitution Group asking MPs, do you know what the Bank of International Settlements is? And invariably, they have no idea, never heard of it, no idea of the power of it. So we draw the conclusion that Britain's MPs in a parliament, which is essentially controlled by these banking interests, but they have not a clue what's going on around them. And I think we're going to mention the banks a little bit later in some other areas.
Well, right now, in fact, because here we are, Deutsche Bank. Is Deutsche Bank going to be the next Lehman Brothers? Well, this was really what was being hinted at the G7 by Prime Minister Abe. And this is Michael Snyder writing on the Seeking Alpha blog, saying 2016, will Deutsche Bank survive the wave of trouble, or will it be the next Lehman Brothers? He says Deutsche Bank is a 1.69 trillion euro assets bank, but it has derivatives exposure of between 55 and 70 trillion dollars. So that really leaves them in a pretty bad state. On the 23rd of May, Moody's downgraded Deutsche Bank, and in most cases, Deutsche Bank is now just 2 grades above junk. And on the same day, Deutsche Bank had to report a 450 million euro charge it was a fine as a result of equity trading fraud, which is trading in stocks and shares. So they were fraudulently trading in stocks and shares and ended up paying another huge fine. And on top of that, Fortune, on the 23rd of May, also reported that the SEC in the United States is investigating Deutsche Bank for false pricing and reporting of mortgage-backed securities. So Deutsche Bank absolutely on the spiral down the bath plug hole, and it remains to be seen where that ends up. Not in a nice place, I suspect. But speaking of Abe in Japan, he's decided to pump some money into the system, $90.7 billion. But what's interesting about this is that he's decided to put this mainly into Maglev technology. So what we're talking about here is J.R. Tokai's one of their Maglev tracks, which is going to include a 20-mile tunnel under the southern Japanese Alps. It's going to be about 4,000 feet below the surface of the peak of the mountain. A huge engineering project, and that's where quite a lot of this money is going. So perhaps money well spent in that case.
Indeed. Somebody has said in the chat box that at the moment Deutsche Bank's exposure is $70 with another 12 zeros behind it.
Yeah.
So that's quite an interesting state of affairs. And where does Deutsche Bank lead us? Well, it leads us onto the subject of common purpose, because Deutsche Bank was one of the big banks that Julia Middleton, the chief executive of Common Purpose, boasted about the amount of help they were getting. Here's part of Facebook. Deutsche Bank is just one of the many organisations that have been crucial to Common Purpose's growth over the years. So we watch as these banks get into increasingly murky commercial operations. Some people could say fraud and corruption, possible bankruptcy. And Common Purpose is boasting that these are the very people that helped set up Common Purpose to do its own dirty deeds. And Julia Middleton, of course, was glowing in her praise of Lehman Brothers in her book, Beyond Authority, suggesting that Lehman Brothers formed a good role model for teenage youngsters. She praised East German bankers for their vision and enthusiasm. So we might ask, just what have these banking institutions given us in Common Purpose? Well, some of this is now coming to the surface again in Plymouth itself, because on the 18th of May, while I was away, the local paper, the Herald, posted this article: controversial Common Purpose closes its Plymouth office. And some interesting statements. Maureen Alderson, the CP spokeswoman, said, "It's with great sadness I must inform you that Common Purpose has had to make the difficult decision to close the Devon and Somerset programme. So naturally, we're very sad about this.
I cried when you told me, Brian.
It is sad. She said that it is a sad decision, but she knows that the common purpose spirit carries on. And I think it'd be very interesting for us to ask, what is the common purpose spirit? And I think we're going to be able to give our audience today a little bit of a taster of that. So here we are, here's the article, and these are some of the comments in the article. Interesting to see that the local Plymouth paper has seemingly changed its spots because, of course, they were totally pro-common purpose. They're saying here that the Yorkshire Post revealed that Common Purpose had been granted free office space at the Department for Children, Schools and Families in Sheffield. I wonder where that information came from, Mike.
Can't imagine.
cpexposed.com. And here we've got Philip Davies, Conservative MP for Shipley, criticised the relationship between government and common purpose. Why did he do that? Because of some exceptionally good work by people assisting common purpose at cpexposed.com. We've got the Third Sector magazine reporting that Common Purpose had broken the Freedom of Information rules, and they got their wrist slapped by the Information Commissioner's Office. Many people believe that they should have actually been fined as a result of those breaches. But what were they doing? Collecting information on anybody who dared to criticise Common Purpose and their use of public money. It goes on here because, of course, we had the breaking of the story that Common Purpose had been exerting undue influence over Leveson. Where did that story come from, Mike?
It came from us, Brian.
That came from the UK column.
Yeah.
And on the 16th of November 2012, the Daily Mail claimed that Common Purpose was like a giant octopus with tentacles everywhere, including the inner sanctums of Westminster, Whitehall and academia. And we've already seen the connections into the banks. And we'll end it with the last comment from the Herald, which is on the 25th of November, the Daily Telegraph published a comment piece on CP noting that Common Purpose had been described as a left-wing version of the Freemasons. Now, this is a very interesting comment because we are hearing with some consistency now that Masonic lodges deeply suspicious of Common Purpose and what it's actually doing. And of course, I think the thing many Freemasons have woken up to is the fact that Common Purpose has been using applied behavioural psychology in order to reframe individuals to follow its policies. So some interesting, we could call it a turf war, but there's something happening at the moment. And I do believe that a few Freemasons have suddenly woken up to the real dangers of Common Purpose. But let's have a look at what Common Purpose can achieve in your city. So in Plymouth, let's bring in this lady. This is Alison Hernandez, who is the Devon and Cornwall Police and Crime Commissioner. And she's been in trouble with the election. It didn't go quite as it should have done. There was a little bit of fiddling, I think people would say, but enough to bring in the police for investigation.
Corruption?
Could possibly be corruption. She's also had to appear in front of another committee, but they simply gave her a smack over the wrist. So why are we interested in this lady? Well, the police force that is apparently investigating is West Mercia, where the Assistant Chief Constable is Chris Singer, who is an ex-Plymouth police boss. And it transpires he's an ex-Common Purpose colleague of the Police and Crime Commissioner herself.
No corruption there.
No corruption, no dirty little networks. And of course, that's a very small example of what Common Purpose can do in Plymouth, mimicked in most other cities in UK. So we've got the cronies hidden at all levels. And if we go back to an article of several years ago by the Daily Mail, they were pointing a finger at Alison Saunders, the head of the Crown Prosecution Service. They said she was involved with Common Purpose. She actually denied it, but that was what was printed in the Daily Mail. And so if we put Plymouth into context, we've now got Common Purpose police commissioners, and we've got Common Purpose senior police officers running whole forces, presumably along common purpose lines. I don't get a comfortable feeling about this, Mike. So let's remember that if common purpose is closing local offices, what are they doing? Well, they're now into thought leadership on a worldwide scale. And you've mentioned quite a lot of this already, Mike, but it's important to see that this very dark and dangerous level of operation of common purpose in Plymouth gives them the right to change the way people think globally. So let's bring in these two parts here. We've got common purpose running courses for leaders, future leaders, anybody who's going to become somebody. But I think this is the really dangerous part of it. They're now into thought leadership, leading beyond authority. What happens when the police lead beyond their authority? And we've also got common purpose bringing in cultural intelligence. So who are these people and what are their values? And at the moment, we're still not getting any other significant organisations who are actually saying what is common purpose. If the banks paid for it and the banks are now being shown to be corrupt themselves, what is this charity?
As we've highlighted over the last number of months, they're running courses in universities right around the world. They're running the CSC Leaders program, which is, of course, the Commonwealth Study leadership program. It's ex-Duke of Edinburgh, but this is all about Commonwealth leaders. The top 100 Commonwealth leaders each year do this course. So they seem to have changed have they done the job locally, do you think?
I think they've done the job, Mike. I think their job was to be the Trojan horse to get common purpose graduates into key positions, chief executives of local authorities, all of the key managerial positions inside the NHS, inside the civil service, inside the police. Get those people in. Once they're in, of course, they will continue to run the crony common purpose cells. And I think that's what the lady meant when she said the spirit of common purpose remains in Plymouth. What she's talking about, I believe, is the fact that there are, of course, a hidden network of people left in Plymouth. They're going to run the common purpose agenda.
Now, just before we move on, we were talking about common purpose a few weeks ago, and Alex Thompson mentioned that the cpexposed.com website had that particular person as a graduate. And we received an email a day or two later from somebody sort of pointing out that we hadn't sort of mentioned a vested interest in that particular website at the time. So we should just clarify that cpexposed.com, it was a website that we were updating regularly. It's not really updated very much at the moment, but it's there as an archive of information, right?
Absolutely true. We created it, and that website then led to all of the subsequent exposure that's taken place. So no secret with that. Some very good work done by a lot of people in bringing the information together on cpexposed.com. It did the job. Would be nice to bring more information to that website, but many, many other people now digging into common purpose.
And just one final point then, don't forget to have a look at the Common Purpose Effect series of articles on the UK Column website as well for more background on this.
Absolutely. So if we've got common purpose in virtually every police force, let's have a look at how our police forces are developing. And we've gone back to the Herald here because it says that Plymouth Police look to the Rock, the Hoff and the Fraggies for inspiration. And on the Plymouth Police Diverse Communities team, this is the quality of work being pushed out by the police. Apparently, there's inspirational rock quotes. And if you go into their briefing room, if I've got this right, at the end of the what do we call these things? Whiteboards. It says this: be the person that when your feet touch the floor in the morning, the devil says, oh shit, they're up. So this is the quality now of Plymouth Police, but of course everywhere that common purpose has been, we're seeing this breakdown in professionalism.
Well, that's what I was going to say, Brian. Any of the sort of images that we have seen of what goes on inside common purpose courses, it's this type of childish communication style, isn't it?
Totally cartoon, childish, but nevertheless very dangerous, because these are supposed to be educated professional people doing a professional job. They appear to be treating it as if they were first-year university students, I think.
Yes. Now, are you aware of Google's Zeitgeist conference?
I'm afraid I'm not, Mike, having been slightly out the loop over the last couple of weeks.
Okay, well, here it is. This is their website, Zeitgeist Minds. This is a Google Zeitgeist conference, which Zeitgeist events are a series of intimate gatherings of top global thinkers and leaders. Zeitgeist Minds is a collection of inspiring videos from these events. Dive in to explore, they say, the ideas that affect our social, economic, political, and cultural surroundings. Hear perspectives from industry pioneers and statespeople, renowned writers and bloggers, scientists and artists, activists and musicians. Learn from progressive minds and discuss topics that influence the world around us. I have to say, Brian, with this type of website and this lot giving these inspirational speeches and videos, you got to wonder how the world is such a screwed up place.
Or you say, we now know why the world is such a screwed up place.
Okay, so why am I mentioning this? Well, because Baroness Shields was speaking at the latest Zeitgeist conference about how to deal with online extremism, and I just wanted to highlight a couple of points from her speech. There she is. She looks very nice, doesn't she?
She looks straight out of an advert for hair dye, I think.
Yes. And when you see what she's saying, you might find that that's about the level of it as well. She says, she said that, folks, this might sound shocking, but the Islamic State has become a powerful global brand. Their messages are professionally produced and delivered in over 20 languages. She says they produce Hollywood-style recruitment films glorifying violence and using game-quality CGI. She said, all of which is sanctioned by a central command. I can't imagine who that was, perhaps somebody called David. But anyway, she went on to say, the brand is well articulated and reinforced through consistent taglines, music and symbols, such as the DAESH flag, which you'll find lots of white helmets carrying, by the way, iconic uniforms, and DAESH-branded memorabilia such as watches, mugs, and even children's backpacks. Is she talking about DAESH or is she talking about Disney? Well, they both begin with D, but I'm not sure. But anyway,
they were probably created in the same place, Mike.
Well,
actually,
indeed. She went on to say, DAESH, who understand the concept of the marketing funnel, starting with mass communications that grab the attention of the widest possible audience, then highly targeted techniques to refine their messages and increase the pool of those who are sympathetic, supportive, and potential willing participants. So there you go. This DAESH, it is truly magical in its ability to do this from the back of a Toyota truck in Iraq or Syria.
Well, these people are very clever, Mike, because they get a Toyota truck and then they get a few old laptops and probably some second-hand phones, and then they simply wipe the rest of the Western media capability off the face of the earth. Their performance is astonishing, or they were created by Western intelligence in the first place.
Right, and
with a little bit of help from the Saudis and Qatar, presumably.
Well, indeed. So she went on to say, I'll just put her picture up there because I just can't stop looking at her. I think she's amazing. And finally, we must empower the global community with better tools to respond to and report harmful content, to speak out and take action. Every person has the ability to recognize bias, hatred, and intolerance, and to say, no, not on my profile, not in my name. There you go. And then she ended by saying, these are just a few ideas. My real appeal to you today is to make this agenda your own. Freedom of expression and freedom of harm are two ideals that can and must coexist. Let's turn our ideas and creativity against the terrorists and extremists. So, what more can you say? A wonderful message from a wonderful lady, no doubt.
I think probably that message was given to her, Mike, because I don't think she'd be capable of strapping those words together, even if she understood what she wanted to say in broad terms in the first place. But I think we have got to give her credit for the quality of the hair dye, because she does look extremely nice.
Yes.
So there we are. Shouldn't she cover her hair to deal with DAESH, though?
Well,
You haven't got an answer for that.
No,
we'll move on.
Not, yeah.
Well, of course, the police are very good at prevent strategy and arresting all of these nasty terrorists that are going to murder us in our beds. They're not so good on paedophiles. We were quite interested in this little article from the Cornish Guardian, where we have a former police officer, 20 years service, of which 4 were in child shy, that should be protection, was given an 8-month suspended jail sentence by Judge Harvey Clark. And why did this happen? Well, apparently this man slipped into child pornography. He was into ordinary pornography, and then one day he slipped. He slipped. So he's been given a fairly easy time. Of course, we've just come to Melanie Shaw, who is a young lady who endured this sort of abuse. She gets put in prison when she reacts badly to what society has delivered to her. So I think we say, well done, Judge Harvey Clark. And if I could pay my $5, I'd like a little look inside his head, I think, Mike.
I think we should just put his picture back up again for a second.
Well, there he is.
Yeah.
So we'll leave people to have a think about that. The paper did label this far too lenient and inappropriate, but actually I think this says something about the judiciary. Are they fit for purpose? I think the answer's got to be no. But this is what is coming. This has got to be on the back of common purpose psychological operations. We've got a new civil service group. And what is it going to be doing? Well, it says that our civil service is so tremendous, everybody in the world wants to copy it. It's impartial, it's impossible to corrupt. Take some reading this. It's the envy of everybody abroad, source of pride for us at home, and they're going to make it more skilled, less bureaucratic. Are you happy with that?
Yeah.
It all sounds very good. So what are they going to do? Well, let's have a look. It says it's going to reform itself. So it's nothing to do with the general public.
No, but hold on a second. They just said it was perfect. Why do they need to reform itself?
Because it's going to be made better. They are going to make themselves better, and they're going to streamline everything. But have a look at the language. It's a once-in-a-generation opportunity to win the credulity, to shape our own future. They're not interested in the public. They're going to shape their own future, and there's one generation to do it. I think this is pretty sinister stuff. And here we are. Here we got the words: clear collective leadership focusing on a sense of common purpose.
Yes.
Something very, very interesting going on. By working with functional leaders to foster stronger capability, professionalisation and efficiency in the civil service. So it's going to be changed to a collective leadership, nothing to do with the general public. They're going to work to their entire satisfaction. So if we have a look at this in a bit more depth, we then find this one. We've got this initiative, out of your vulnerabilities will come your strength. So the civil service is now very keen to include vulnerable people in its future leaders. And we've got Claire Moriarty, the permanent secretary of DEFRA, saying that we are going to have this vulnerability initiative. And what's going to happen is when they have a meeting, everybody's going to have to say one thing that's concerning them professionally and one thing that's concerning them in their private life. And
this is like circle time.
You've got it, Mike, exactly. This is circle time for grown-ups. And of course, the moment you know the personal weaknesses, you can bully people. This stuff is now emerging in front of our very eyes. If you go and have a look at this yourself, you'll find that under the article there are comments. Anon2 had posted that basically, as a disabled person, they'd been bullied, and this person says, don't reveal your vulnerabilities because you're going to be bullied. So I decided to put a comment up, and I said it was dangerous psychological manipulation to enable them to bully people more easily. But that went up for moderation, and nobody's moderated it yet.
I think you might find it has been moderated.
Probably has, but there we go. In my mind and your mind, this mimics circle time, where young school children are also encouraged to give out personal information, which of course is an attack on their developing personalities.
Yes. Yes. Well, war, Brian.
More of it. We need more.
We need more. Yes, apparently we do. So Ash Carter, Defense Secretary in the US, was speaking to the graduating class of the US Naval Academy a few days ago in Annapolis. And he said that to the new officers, he said, you will counter the prospect of Russian aggression and coercion, especially in Europe. You will manage historic change in the Asia Pacific, where China is rising, which is fine, but behaving aggressively, which is not. You will strengthen our deterrent and defense forces in the face of North Korea's continued nuclear pursuits and provocations. You will check Iranian aggression and malign influence in the Gulf and protect our friends and allies there, Saudi Arabia. And he went on to talk about China in particular, and he said China has taken some expansive and unprecedented actions in the South China Sea, pressing excessive maritime claims contrary to international law. Its construction and subsequent militarization of artificial islands on disputed features far surpass all other land reclamation efforts by other nations there. All others combined, and when other aircraft, ships, and even fishermen act in accordance with international law near these features, China tries sometimes to turn them away. We are determined to stand with partners in upholding core principles like freedom of navigation and overflight, free flow of commerce. So he criticized China, but really what he was saying to these young recruits or these young graduates was that they will be countering Russia, they will be countering China, and so on. Well, China has reacted to that in the Global Times. And they say US Defense Secretary Ash Carter on Friday issued another sharp rebuke of China's actions in the South China Sea by warning Beijing that it's on a path to build a, quote, great wall of self-isolation. Carter said the Pentagon's best weapons, including the stealthy F-35 fighters, so the guy's clearly off his head, because he doesn't seem to realize that these things don't fly. But anyway, including the F-35, the F-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft, and newest surface warfare ships will be deployed to the Pacific theater. And the Global Times says Carter's words have been the most threatening China has heard since the end of the Cold War. They confirm some Chinese people's worries about the worst-case scenario in the Sino-US relationship, in which Washington may translate its intention to counter China into real actions. The Pentagon may be willing to see this confrontation between China and the US, but the US cannot overawe China wielding military stick. So China pretty unhappy about Carter's continuing rhetoric. In the meantime, so are some American scientists. So this is the Union of Concerned Scientists, and they have released a report last week warning that the governments of the United States, this is a quote, the governments of the United States and the People's Republic of China are a few poor decisions away from starting a war that could escalate rapidly and end in a nuclear exchange. Lack of mutual trust and growing sense that their differences may be irreconcilable are pushing both governments to look for military solutions. And they said, but there's no military solution to the security dilemma facing the two countries. As long as both sides remain committed to pursuing technical solutions to the problems that divide them, they are condemned to continue competing indefinitely, and so it goes on. But more voices being added to highlight the danger of well, it's not Russian or Chinese aggression; they're reacting.
Oh, well, that is overwhelmingly the case, and I think it's very interesting. And we're now seeing some of this questioning of what the US and the UK are doing is coming into mainstream publications.
Right. So Ash Carter saying that China is being particularly aggressive, building airstrips on reclaimed islands in the South China Sea. This is particularly aggressive, unprecedented. The US doesn't build military bases in any other countries, does it?
700, I think, Mike. Yes,
and some more, because Argentina has just given the go-ahead for new US military installations there. So this plans also include negotiations over another military base on the border with Paraguay and Brazil. So there's no expansionism from the United States at all.
No.
No. Yes. So this I find fascinating. This is the Cato Institute, and this is a think tank, of course, and they are calling for Obama's Nobel Peace Prize to be removed. And I thought this deserved a bit of comment, because it is pretty fascinating what they're saying. The person that has written this is Nat Hentoff. He is an authority on the First Amendment and the Bill of Rights in the United States. He's a member of the Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press, and he's also a senior fellow of the Cato Institute. And he says in this article, last week, President Obama passed an important historic milestone. The occasion was not marked with ceremony, and no statements were issued by the White House. In spite of its significance, most of the national media allowed the occasion to pass with little comment or in-depth analysis, which is why you may not be aware that Obama now has the ignominious distinction of being continuously at war longer than any other American president in US history. He says the New York Times noted the irony that the longest-serving wartime president was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize only 9 months into his first term in office, yet the article characterized Obama as a reluctant warrior laboring under a heavy burden inherited from his predecessor. Awarding the Nobel Peace Prize on the basis of expectations was unprecedented, but after 8 years of continuous warfare, the Nobel Committee should take another unprecedented action. It should revoke Obama's Peace Prize and demand repayment of the prize money. I couldn't agree more. I suggest people go and read the rest of that little piece, because it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's amazing how this is developing. We'd like to end by just reminding people that, well, we got it right again. So here is the Independent with yet another story about the EU referendum and plans that could pave the way for a EU army being held back. So this is quite well known now that the EU army plans are all there, but they weren't going to be announced until after the EU referendum had taken place. And we've just inset there 2 tweets that we pushed out over a month ago, where we were warning that the EU military plans were already in place. All of the command and control structures have been built within UK, and we are told it would simply take 24 hours to switch all of those command and control systems on, which means that Britain's military would effectively be fully subsumed into the European Union with little or no control left from Westminster. So this is beginning to come to the surface. We know that there's finally consternation amongst senior retired military officers, some of whom I think have woken up with a huge shock to realise what has been put together under their noses. But as somebody has recently said, alongside the military union, if the EU pushes through the EU Treasury as well, then essentially Britain ceases to exist as a nation. Perhaps we ought to end on the note, Mike, that even if there is a vote to leave, Brexit is achieved, there's going to have to be a huge amount of work in order to shut down the common purpose style control network, which of course infests the whole of the civil service and the government's decision-making process. I think this is really the most worrying thing, is that decisions are no longer being made through Westminster. They are being made directly through the civil service, which, contrary to its own belief system, is as corrupt as you can possibly get.
Yeah.
So UK column got it right. We got it right over common purpose initially, and we're warning what the real danger is now. An outvote is not time to relax. An outvote is the start of the need to do something very significant to get this country back on track. Personally, I believe it requires a completely new set of politicians to be installed in Westminster. What we do with the old ones, I think we can have a think about that.
Indeed.
Thank you to all the new subscribers. Thank you for the positive comments as a result of Mike's newsletter, which has just gone out in the last couple of days. And we'd like to say, please, if you're not already a subscriber, consider subscribing or making a donation. We can only do what we do with your continued support. Thanks very much for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.